Champagne flowed freely as massive egos clashed and insults flew. A pair of arrogant socialites thought they could publicly humiliate a quiet waitress at the year's most exclusive gala. They had no idea the billionaire they were desperately trying to impress answered to only one person, her. The crystal chandeliers of Le Petit Bijou Manhattan's most unapologetically exclusive dining room cast a warm, golden glow over a sea of tailored tuxedos and designer gowns. The air was thick with the scent of white truffles, expensive perfume, and the unspoken currency of New York's elite, raw, unadulterated power. To secure a reservation, here required either a 6-month wait or a bloodline that predated the Industrial Revolution. Tonight, however, the restaurant was closed to the public. It had been entirely bought out for a private celebration by Kensington Holdings, a behemoth in the private equity sector. Standing quietly near the massive mahogany double doors of the kitchen, hands clasped behind her back, was Riley. Riley wore the standard uniform of the establishment's waitstaff, a crisp, heavily starched white dress shirt, a slim black tie, an immaculate black apron, and polished rubber-soled shoes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe utilitarian bun. To the casual observer, she was entirely unremarkable, just another invisible gear in the flawless machine of high-end hospitality, which was exactly how she wanted it. Riley Hemming was not a waitress. She was the founder-majority shareholder and ultimate architect of Kensington Holdings, the man whose name was on the door, Avery Kensington, the famous billionaire, regularly featured on the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, was her hand-picked CEO. He was the public face, the charismatic dealmaker, the silver-haired titan of industry who thrived in the spotlight. Riley, conversely, was a ghost. Having built her empire from the ashes of her late father's modest software firm, she multiplied her wealth through ruthless, brilliant, and entirely anonymous market maneuvers. She despised the paparazzi, loathed the sycophantic culture of the ultra-rich, and preferred to pull the strings from the shadows. Tonight's gala was ostensibly to celebrate a highly lucrative quarter, but its true purpose was an audition. Kensington Holdings was 48 hours away from signing an $850 million acquisition deal with Croft Logistics, a rapidly expanding supply chain empire based in Chicago. The owners of Croft Logistics Bradley and Cynthia Croft were the guests of honor tonight. "Table 4 needs water," hissed Thomas, the perpetually sweating floor manager, snapping his fingers in front of Riley's face to break her reverie. "The Crofts, and for God's sake, be careful. They've already complained about the lighting, the temperature of the room, and the valet." "Understood, Thomas," Riley replied, her voice smooth and deferential. She picked up a sweating silver pitcher of ice water and glided onto the floor. As she approached table 4, Riley immediately felt the toxic energy radiating from the couple. Bradley Croft was a large man, with a flushed, beefy face, wearing a tuxedo that looked expensive, but fit poorly. His wife Cynthia was draped in vintage Chanel, her fingers weighed down by diamonds that caught the chandelier light like aggressive flashbulbs. They were new money, loud, insecure, and desperate to prove they belonged in the room. "I'm just saying, Bradley, if Avery Kensington really respected us, he would have seated us at his immediate right, not one seat over." Cynthia complained, her voice a nasal whine that cut through the soft jazz playing over the speakers. "Relax, Cyn. The ink isn't dry on the contract yet," Bradley muttered furiously, typing on his phone. "Once Kensington signs, we'll be the ones buying out this restaurant. I'll fire that arrogant valet myself." Riley stepped up to the table, positioning herself at Cynthia's right side. "Excuse me, Mum. May I pour your water?" she asked softly. Cynthia didn't even look up. She merely held up a hand, her manicured fingers inches from Riley's face, waving her off like a pesky insect. Not now. Can't you see we are speaking? Riley stepped back, her expression perfectly neutral. My apologies. I will return. Wait, Bradley barked, slamming his phone down on the table. He looked Riley up and down, his eyes filled with casual disdain. Since you're hovering, go find out why the hell the sommelier hasn't brought the 2015 Bordeaux I asked for. Do you people not understand how a multi-course pacing works? I will check on that immediately for you, sir, Riley said, offering a polite nod. And do something about your hair, Cynthia added, finally looking at Riley with a sneer. A stray strand almost fell on my plate. It's unhygienic. They really hire just anyone off the street these days, don't they? Riley's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second, but years of high-stakes negotiations had given her absolute control over her micro-expressions. I will fix it immediately, ma'am. Riley walked back toward the kitchen, her mind whirring. So this is how they treat people who can do nothing for them, she thought. In the boardroom during the initial merger meetings, Bradley Croft had been the picture of humility and grace, practically kissing Avery Kensington's feet. But here, stripped of the need to impress his true nature, and his wife's bled through instantly. Just as Riley reached the swinging doors, a ripple of hushed energy swept through the dining room. The heavy oak doors at the front entrance had opened, and Avery Kensington had arrived. Avery was a striking man in his late 60s, impeccably dressed in a bespoke midnight blue Tom Ford tuxedo. He exuded an effortless, magnetic authority. He didn't demand attention. He simply commanded it by existing. As he walked through the room, the volume of conversation dropped. Guests stood up eagerly, reaching out to shake his hand, desperate for a sliver of his attention. Riley watched from the shadows. Avery smiled warmly, greeting partners and junior executives by their first names. He even stopped to thank a young busboy who held a tray out of his way, patting the young man on the shoulder. Then Avery's eyes scanned the room. They passed over the billionaires, the politicians, and the socialites, finally locking onto Riley, standing near the kitchen. For a brief, imperceptible moment, the great Avery Kensington bowed his head, just a fraction of an inch, in deep, reverent acknowledgement. Riley offered a tiny, almost invisible nod in return. The game is on the look, said. Avery turned his attention toward the center of the room, making a beeline for table 4. The Crofts practically leaped out of their chairs as he approached. Avery, my God, it is wonderful to see you. Bradley boomed his voice, suddenly stripped of its previous harshness, replaced by a thick, syrupy warmth. He extended both hands to grasp Avery's. Bradley, Cynthia, you look radiant, Avery said smoothly, taking his seat at the head of the table. I hope the staff is taking excellent care of you tonight. Cynthia let out a high-pitched musical laugh that sounded entirely practiced. Oh, Avery, you are too kind. Everything is just magnificent. Although, she leaned in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Good help is so hard to find these days. The girl serving our table is a bit slow. But we are making do we don't want to complain. Avery's smile didn't waver, but his eyes grew cold. He knew exactly who was assigned to this section of the floor. Is that so? He murmured. Well, let us hope the service improves. As the evening progressed, the multi-course tasting menu unfolded with the precision of a Swiss watch. Plates of delicate scallop crudo with citrus foam were replaced by roasted squab with black truffle juice. Through it all, Riley remained assigned to the Crofts' table. Thomas the manager had kept her there precisely because her stoic demeanor was the only thing preventing a full-scale meltdown. The other servers had drawn straws to avoid Bradley Croft's relentless micromanagement. The tension at table 4 was a bizarre study in contrasts. Whenever Avery Kensington was engaged in conversation with them, the Crofts were delightful, charming, and full of praise for the food and the ambiance. But the moment Avery turned his head to speak to an executive at the adjacent table, Bradley and Cynthia would turn their venom onto Riley. "This squab is tepid," Bradley hissed at Riley when she came to clear his plate, ensuring his voice was low enough that Avery wouldn't hear. "If you carried the plates faster, instead of dragging your feet, it wouldn't lose temperature." "I apologize, sir. I will let the chef know," Riley replied, stacking the fine china with practiced ease. "Don't just apologize, be better," Cynthia sneered aggressively, shoving her half-eaten plate toward Riley, nearly knocking over a crystal salt cellar. "And fetch more of those brioche rolls. The warm ones, not the stale ones you brought last time." "Right away, Mum." Riley retreated to the kitchen carrying the plates. Her mind was already made up. The $850 million acquisition was dead. She would not allow Kensington Holdings to absorb a company run by people with such a profound lack of basic human decency. In business, Riley firmly believed that a leader's character was exactly how they treated the lowest person on the totem pole. If Bradley Croft treated a waitress like dirt, he would treat his warehouse workers, his drivers, and his junior staff the exact same way. It was a liability Riley refused to underwrite. However, the night was not over, and Riley wanted to see exactly how far the Crofts were willing to go. The main course was concluding, which meant it was time for the showpiece of the evening, a 1990 Domaine de la Romane Conti. It was an astonishingly rare vintage, costing upwards of $20,000 a bottle, specifically requested by Avery to celebrate the impending merger. Thomas pulled Riley aside near the wine cellar. He was pale and sweating profusely. "Riley, please. The sommelier is dealing with a crisis at table 6. I need you to pour the DRC for the Kensington table. Do not mess this up. One drop on the tablecloth, and my career is over." Riley took the velvet-lined basket, holding the precious dust-covered bottle. "I have it handled, Thomas. Breathe." She approached table 4 with the reverence the wine demanded. Avery was currently deep in conversation with Bradley about overseas shipping regulations. Cynthia, feeling left out of the corporate talk, was loudly detailing her recent trip to Milan to the bewildered wife of a tech CEO seated next to her. "And I told the boutique manager I simply cannot wait 3 months for a Birkin. Do you know who my husband is?" Cynthia boasted, throwing her hands in the air to emphasize her point. Riley stepped to Cynthia's right side, holding a fresh, oversized burgundy glass. She carefully extracted the cork, presented it to Avery, who nodded subtly, and then moved to pour for the lady first, as etiquette dictated. "Excuse me, ma'am," Riley said softly, leaning in to pour the ruby liquid. "So I told him to call Paris immediately, and—" Cynthia, wildly animated by her own story, threw her right arm back in a dramatic gesture. Her heavy diamond bracelet slammed violently into the neck of the ancient wine bottle just as Riley began to pour. The impact knocked the bottle off balance. Riley's lightning-fast reflexes managed to catch the bottle before it shattered against the table, saving the $20,000 wine, but the sudden jerk caused a heavy splash of the dark red liquid to leap from the glass. A large, unmistakable crimson stain splattered across the bodice of Cynthia Croft's vintage white Chanel dress. Time seemed to stop inside Le Petit Bijou. The soft hum of conversation instantly died. The jazz music suddenly felt glaringly loud in the dead silence. Every head in the dining room snapped toward table 4. Cynthia looked down at her chest. Her eyes widened to the size of saucers. Her mouth opened, but for 3 seconds no sound came out. And then she shrieked, "My dress! My dress! You stupid, clumsy bitch!" Cynthia screamed, jumping up from her chair so fast it toppled backward and crashed to the floor. She frantically dabbed at the stain with a silk napkin, which only smeared the red wine further into the expensive fabric. Bradley Croft surged to his feet, his face turning an apocalyptic shade of purple. He didn't even look at his wife. His unhinged fury was directed entirely at the calm waitress standing before them. "Are you blind?" Bradley roared, his voice echoing off the high gold-leaf ceilings. "Do you have any idea what you've just done? That dress costs more than you make in 5 years, you incompetent idiot." Riley did not flinch. She set the bottle of Romane Conti gently upright on the table. "Sir, I apologize for the spill, but Mrs. Croft threw her arm back while I was pouring." "Do not talk back to me!" Bradley slammed his massive fist onto the table, rattling the silverware. "I saw exactly what happened. You are a clumsy, uneducated peasant who has no business breathing the same air as us. Where is the manager? Thomas came sprinting out of the kitchen, his face drained of all color, looking like a man approaching the guillotine. "Mr. Croft, I am so deeply sorry. Please let us take care of the dry cleaning. I assure you." "Dry cleaning?" Cynthia shrieked, tears of pure rage spilling over her mascara. "It's ruined. It's an archival piece. I don't want an apology from you." Bradley snarled at Thomas, pointing a thick, trembling finger at Riley's face. "I want her fired. Right here. Right now. In front of me. And then I want her on her knees, cleaning up the mess she made on this floor." Thomas swallowed hard, terrified. "Sir, please, it was an accident." "Do you know who I am?" Bradley bellowed, leaning over the table, spit flying from his lips. He gestured wildly toward the head of the table. "I am about to sign a billion-dollar merger with Avery Kensington. We are going to own half this city. You will fire this worthless girl right now, or I will personally see to it that this restaurant is shut down, and you are both on the street." Riley stood perfectly still, her hands clasped calmly in front of her apron. Her eyes shifted from the screaming, red-faced Bradley Croft to the hysterical Cynthia, and finally to the head of the table. Avery Kensington had not moved. He hadn't flinched when the glass broke. He hadn't spoken during the screaming. He sat back in his chair, his hands resting elegantly on the arms, watching the Crofts with an expression of cold, detached fascination, like a scientist observing a particularly ugly species of insect. "Avery, I am so sorry you have to witness this," Bradley panted, suddenly remembering the billionaire was sitting right there. He smoothed his tie, trying to rein in his temper, though his chest heaved. "This establishment clearly lacks standards. I promise you, when we merge our companies, I will bring my own logistics discipline to your operational staff. We don't tolerate this kind of gross incompetence." The silence that followed was agonizing. The entire room held its breath, waiting for the legendary Avery Kensington to placate his future business partner. Instead, Avery slowly picked up his linen napkin. He folded it once meticulously and laid it on the table. Then Avery Kensington pushed his chair back and stood up. He didn't look at Bradley. He didn't look at Cynthia. He bypassed the spilled wine, walked slowly around the long table, and stopped directly in front of the quiet waitress in the black apron. Avery bowed his head. "Are you all right, boss?" Avery asked, his voice calm, clear, and loud enough for every single person in the dead, silent room to hear. The silence that descended upon Le Petit Bijou was absolute. It was not merely the absence of sound. It was a heavy, suffocating vacuum, as if all the oxygen had been instantly sucked out of the golden-lit room. The clinking of crystal, the soft murmur of million-dollar deals being struck, the gentle hum of the jazz trio in the corner, everything ceased. Every single eye in the dining room was locked onto the impossible tableau unfolding at table 4. Avery Kensington, the undisputed titan of private equity, a man whose mere signature moved markets and dismantled corporations, was standing with his head bowed to a waitress. Bradley Croft blinked. Once. Twice. A nervous, hollow chuckle scraped its way out of his throat, sounding violently out of place in the dead quiet room. "Avery," Bradley stammered, wiping a sudden bead of sweat from his forehead with a trembling hand. "Avery, what on earth kind of joke is this? Did you hire an actress to test us? Because I assure you, if this is some sort of eccentric corporate hazing ritual—" "I do not joke about my business, Bradley," Avery replied, smoothly straightening his posture. He did not look at Bradley. His eyes remained respectfully on Riley. "And I certainly do not joke about my employer. You demanded to speak to the manager. I am afraid Thomas does not have the authority to handle your termination request. Only she does." Avery extended an elegant hand toward the quiet woman in the black apron. "Bradley Cynthia, allow me to formally introduce you to Ms. Riley Hemming. She is the founder, the majority shareholder, and the sole architect of Kensington Holdings. She is the one buying your company." Cynthia Croft's mouth fell open so wide it was a wonder her jaw did not dislocate. The hand clutching the wine-stained silk napkin froze mid-air. The color drained out of her heavily contoured face, leaving her looking sickly and hollow beneath the glittering chandelier. Thomas, the floor manager, let out a tiny, high-pitched gasp and took 3 rapid steps backward, pressing himself against the oak paneling of the wall as if hoping to merge with it. Riley did not smile. She did not gloat. Her expression remained exactly as it had been all evening, dangerously calm. Slowly, deliberately, she reached behind her back and untied the knot of her black apron. The sound of the heavy fabric sliding off her shoulders seemed deafening in the silence. She folded the apron meticulously twice and laid it gently on the table right next to the puddle of the $20,000 Domaine de la Romanée Conti. Next, she reached up and pulled the severe pins from her hair, allowing the dark waves to fall freely over her shoulders. The transformation was subtle, but terrifyingly profound. In shedding the uniform, she shed the invisibility. The submissive posture vanished. When she finally looked Bradley Croft in the eye, the crushing weight of her billionaire status radiated from her gaze like physical heat. "Mr. Croft?" Riley began her voice, no longer the soft, deferential whisper of a server, but the sharp, resonant tone of a woman who commanded empires. "You asked me mere moments ago if I knew who you were." Bradley tried to speak. He opened his mouth, but only a dry, raspy wheeze emerged. His vocal cords seemed to have paralyzed entirely. The aggressive, red-faced bully from 3 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a terrified man watching his life's work disintegrate before his eyes. "I know exactly who you are, Bradley," Riley continued, stepping closer to the table. "I know that your Q3 EBITDA margin dropped by 4.2% due to gross mismanagement in your Chicago fleet. I know that you are currently leveraged to the breaking point with a high-interest mezzanine loan from JP Morgan Chase, and I know that without the $850 million infusion from my firm, Croft Logistics will miss payroll by the 14th of next month, forcing you into Chapter 11 bankruptcy." A collective gasp rippled through the surrounding tables. The other executives in the room, men and women who swam with sharks for a living, stared at Riley in awe. "I built Kensington Holdings on a very simple, non-negotiable philosophy." Riley said, her eyes shifting to Cynthia, who was now trembling violently in her chair. "Numbers can be manipulated, projections can be faked, but character cannot be hidden. The way you treat a person from whom you have absolutely nothing to gain is the purest reflection of who you are. And tonight, I saw exactly who you are." "Ms. Hemming." "Riley." "Please." Bradley finally choked out his voice, cracking wildly. He gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned bone white. The arrogance had been entirely stripped away, leaving only raw, naked desperation. We were stressed. The pressure of the merger. My wife's dress. It was a lapse in judgment, I swear to you. This isn't how we operate. It is exactly how you operate, Riley countered her voice, dropping to a glacial whisper. Do you think this is a coincidence I requested to serve this section tonight? We have had private investigators looking into your internal corporate culture for 6 weeks. We found 17 separate NDAs signed by former administrative assistants and warehouse managers citing severe verbal abuse and hostile work environments. I wanted to see if the rumors were true before I handed you nearly $1 billion of my capital. Riley pointed a slender finger at the shattered remnants of the wine glass and the ruined tablecloth. You berated a woman over a mistake caused by your own wife's carelessness. You demanded my livelihood be stripped away for your own amusement. You called me a peasant. Cynthia Croft suddenly burst into loud, hysterical sobs. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'll pay for the wine. We can fix this, Avery, please, say something, she pleaded, looking frantically at the silver-haired CEO. Avery merely adjusted his cufflinks. I answer to Ms. Hemming Cynthia. Her word is the absolute law of this firm. Riley leaned forward, placing both hands flat on the table, bringing her face inches from Bradley's sweating forehead. You thought you were the most powerful person in this room, Bradley. But let me introduce a plot twist that your lawyers failed to uncover during our due diligence. Riley's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. 3 weeks ago, an anonymous holding company called Oak Creek Capital quietly bought out the commercial real estate portfolio of the Carlyle Group in the Midwest. That portfolio included the massive 90-acre distribution center in Chicago that serves as your company's absolute lifeblood. Bradley's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror. He knew exactly what she was about to say. I am Oak Creek Capital. Riley whispered, the twist landing like a physical blow. I am your landlord, and as of midnight tonight, due to a highly specific morality clause buried in your original lease agreement, a clause my lawyers ensure is ironclad, your lease is hereby terminated. No, no, you cannot do that. Bradley roared, an animalistic panic taking over his features. He shot up from his chair, violently knocking his crystal water glass to the hardwood floor, where it shattered into 100 jagged pieces. That specific facility houses 60% of our domestic inventory. If we lose that space, we are dead in the water. You are intentionally trying to destroy my company. I am not trying to destroy your company. Bradley, I am simply refusing to save it. Riley corrected him, coldly, standing remarkably tall. The massive acquisition is officially cancelled. The paperwork will be shredded by my legal team first thing tomorrow morning. You monster! Cynthia screamed, losing whatever tiny shred of dignity she had left. She stood up, her ruined vintage dress clinging awkwardly to her frame, looking utterly deranged. You completely set us up. We will sue you. We will take absolutely everything you have. Bradley knows the top corporate litigators in New York. Please feel free to try, Riley replied, entirely unfazed by the hysterical outburst. My lead counsel is a senior partner at Sullivan & Cromwell. I assure you they deeply enjoy a good bloodbath. However, considering you will not be able to afford your own legal fees by next Friday, I strongly suggest you save your breath. Bradley collapsed back into his chair, burying his flushed face in his trembling hands. A horrific, wet, sobbing sound emanated from him. He was a broken man. In the span of 10 minutes, he had gone from a soon-to-be billionaire to a man staring down the terrifying barrel of total financial ruin and public humiliation. And it was all because he could not be bothered to show basic human decency to a waitress. Riley turned her back on them, signaling the end of the swift execution. She looked toward the towering, broad-shouldered man standing near the entrance. Richard, Riley called out. The head of private security immediately marched forward. Mr. and Mrs. Croft are leaving right now. Please escort them to the service elevator in the back. I do not want them walking through the main lobby. It would completely ruin the aesthetic of the evening." "Right away, Miss Hemming," Richard said in a deep, gravelly voice. He stepped behind Bradley, placing a massive hand on his ruined, trembling shoulder. "Time to go, sir." Bradley did not fight. He was numb. He allowed himself to be hauled to his feet. Cynthia, however, was still crying hysterically as they were marched away from the glittering lights toward the stainless steel double doors where the staff took the trash out. Once the heavy kitchen doors swung shut, swallowing the Crofts into the darkness, the dining room remained frozen. Riley turned to face the elite crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Riley said, her voice echoing clearly, "I apologize for the theatrical interruption to your evening. At Kensington Holdings, we believe true wealth requires integrity. We only do business with people who understand that principle. The Croft merger is dead." She paused, allowing the heavy weight of the news to settle. "However, my team successfully closed a deal to buy out their primary competitor, Apex Freight, 30 minutes ago. Their incredible CEO will be joining our portfolio. Enjoy the evening." Thunderous applause erupted. Thomas, the terrified manager, scurried over to Riley holding a silver tray with a glass of Romani Conti. "Thank you, Thomas," Riley smiled. "Double your bonus tomorrow." She took a slow, deliberate sip. It tasted like absolute, pure victory. The elite crowd would never forget the waitress who owned them. If you loved this story of a billionaire waitress serving instant karma, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that character is everything. Turn on those notifications so you never miss our next shocking twist. Drop a comment down below. How would you have handled the Crofts? We will see you in the next video for more incredible drama.